Welcome to Built Not Burnt Out, the podcast where we explore what it really takes to build lasting health, resilience, and freedom from the inside out. I'm your host, Melissa Peterson, attorney, mom of 10, certified food addiction professional through the Addiction Reset community, health coach, and founder of the Becoming Method. On this podcast, we have honest conversations about food addiction, metabolic health, mindset, and what it truly takes to make lasting transformation. Not through willpower, but by understanding the science behind our behaviors and becoming the person we were created to be. Today, I'm joined by Susan Amanda, a licensed nurse and certified food addiction professional through Joan Iflin's Addiction Reset community. Susan is leading a group within the ARC focused on helping people understand root causes of chronic disease and how metabolic healing can put many chronic conditions into remission. Susan's own journey with food addiction inspired her to help others see many of the chronic diseases that we accept as normal, and we don't have to have them as a life sentence. Through education, food addiction recovery, and addressing metabolic dysfunction at its root, she's helping people reclaim their health and their lives. Today, we'll talk to Susan about her personal story, her journey into food addiction recovery, her work within the ARC, and what she's doing to help people move towards remission of chronic disease. Whether you're struggling with food addiction yourself, caring for someone who is, or simply looking to improve your metabolic health, I know you're going to take away practical wisdom and a renewed sense of hope. So let's dive in. Susan, thank you so much for being here today. And we really, really appreciate it. And I'd love to hear about your journey through your food addiction.
Thank you, Melissa, for asking me to do this. This is exciting. Um, so I have had food addiction probably almost my whole life. One of my first memories is of my grandfather over feeding me a fruit until, and of course, I don't know if I really remember it or if I just remember my family talking about it all the time and thinking it was funny. But he overfed me a fruit until I was about 18 months old, and he overfed it to me until I threw up. And so when I got older, it dawned on me, oh my gosh, that's why I equivalate food and overeating with love, because that's what he thought. Well, and he was, he thought he was giving me love. And then I had my first diet when I was 9 years old. Went on a diet with my mother at 9. And I've always been big and tall and big boned. And so, and I always thought that food was like a reward. And so it was when I was first a teenager that I realized that my cravings were less if I was on a low carb diet. And so my mother and I went on a high protein, low carb diet. At that time, that was many years ago. At that time, there wasn't a variety of foods to eat. So, we ate a lot of the same foods because there just wasn't a variety. And it got to the point that I couldn't control my food. I even went so far as to have the gastric sleeve, which helped for about a few weeks. But then they mislead you that it's going to take away the hunger hormones. It does for a few weeks, but then they come back with a vengeance, because although it makes your stomach smaller, it doesn't do anything for the food noise in your head and the emotional eating and the emotional addiction to the foods and the sugar. And then, so then I found out that sugar and high carb foods made me feel sleepy and bad, and my brain was foggy. I didn't have any energy. And that if I ate vegetables and proteins, clean foods that I prepared myself, and sometimes you can buy those prepared already that don't have additives in them, that I felt better. I had more energy. I wasn't as foggy. I could think. I didn't get sleepy, like sitting at my desk working and all of a sudden just feel this brain fog and sleep. And I realized too as I got older that these processed foods also affected my mobility and my breathing too. The
Oh.
processed foods did, and so that's kind of my story. And then I found the arc, and I also had already realized I was I was actually a food addict, but mainly processed foods because they had the additives in them that make us addicted to the food.
And Susan, a lot of people probably won't know what the ARC is. Do you want to talk a little bit about what the ARC is and what it does and what you do in it?
The ARC is Addiction Reset Community, and it's a group of like-minded individuals that have gathered together under the leadership of Dr. Joan Ifland, PhD in addictive food nutrition. And we meet. We have almost 24 hours a day of meetings on Zoom. We have a Art TV on YouTube. We have pods and advocates, and we meet and support each other. And it's a kind, caring, science-based group. And we support one another, and we learn ways to deal with food addiction because we have a saying in the art that if overeating and food addiction was just about the food, we'd all have it. It would all be taken care of. But it's only 20% about the food. It's 80% about everything else. So in the art, um, we learn mindful self-compassion and awareness. We learn parts work, which is using the internal family systems and self-therapy to help us work through issues. We learn a method totters where we use trial and error to figure out what works for us and what doesn't. And in the ARC, using that method, we figure out our own eating plan that's just for me. And Melissa's figured out her own eating plan that's just for her. And no one's eating plan is like anybody else's. But we can talk about, well, this is what worked for me, or this is what I tried. And then we have advocates, which I'm an advocate, Melissa's an advocate. We work with new members and help them develop their own individualized recovery and eating plan. And one of the most important things I learned in the art is to be my own best friend. And that's part of the mindful self-compassion. And
Yeah.
affirmations and gratitudes. I had always kind of poo-pooed affirmations and gratitudes, but they're so important. And one of the ones that works the best for me that anybody can use is my brain and my stomach are in sync, and there is no reason or it is unnecessary for me to overeat to feel satisfied.
That's a great affirmation. I like that one.
And so, but that's a little bit about my journey. I didn't find the arc until after I'd had the gastric sleeve. I wish I had found it before, but it's the arc started about like maybe right around the time I had the gastric sleeve because I had looked for food addiction resources. And so what happened was I signed up for a program for bariatric surgery patients and worked with this counselor. And I had a anxiety attack over not being able to eat. I couldn't eat because I didn't have enough room in my stomach to eat. I was eating high protein things recommended from my surgery, but I had a hunger that wasn't in my stomach. It was in my brain. And
Wow.
I had an anxiety attack. And it was like, I felt like I was just going to crawl out of my skin, actually. It's what I felt like. I don't know how else to describe it, but I was so anxious and I couldn't eat. I could not physically eat anything else because I didn't have any room. And so I was telling her about it, and she said, Susan, you sound like an addict. You need to find a group that deals with food addiction. And that's when I found the ARC.
Wow. When was it? What year did you join the ARC?
It's been around 5 to 6 years ago.
And then you became a certified food addiction recovery advocate in the ARC. When did you
Mhm.
start that journey?
About a year after I joined, 9 months to a year after I joined, because um, I'm also a nurse, and so I know about chronic diseases. I know about diabetes, arthritis, COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Sorry. uh, I know about all those things, but what I learned in the ARC, by joining the ARC, I learned how, because it's science based, which I also love. I don't know if I mentioned that, but it's science based. Um, Joan is like the ultimate researcher of the research that's been done on food addiction and processed foods. And so I found out that there were additives added to processed foods that cause us to crave it more.
Yes.
And I had already known before I joined the ARC and before I had the surgery that there was something like that going on, but I didn't know to what extreme. And another book that I read was by the Diamonds, and this has been years ago. And they're vegetarians, but they had talked about how additives were added to food to make us crave more. And so they talked about that in their book, and about how the uh, American Medical Association, when it was very first starting, they had to decide, are we going to go into disease management and treatment, or are we going to focus on prevention? And they decided to go into management and treatment and not prevention. And,
Wow.
and it was because of the pharmaceuticals. And that's where it comes from. We'll just give them a pill. If somebody comes in with congestive heart failure, we'll just give them a pill. We won't talk to them about how to prevent it. We'll just say, oh, you have congestive heart failure. Here, take this medicine. But now you see more holistic medicine with when you go to practitioners now, and Medicare is even looking at more holistic approaches to medicine and
Wow.
teaching people how to prevent diseases and prevent exacerbations of diseases. And with congestive heart failure, people may not know this, but there's pharmaceuticals out there now that actually improve the heart. If you're in heart failure, they improve the heart, and you can eventually stop having to take them, because if you follow your discharge instructions, your diet, activity, all those things, if you follow all those things you're supposed to, take your medicine as ordered, you can actually improve your heart tissue, the heart muscle, and improve your health, and be able to possibly get off those medicines and live a better life.
Wow. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is. It is. It really is. And for my work as a nurse, I actually call people that have been discharged from the hospital and talk to them. I call heart patients who have heart and vascular issues that have been discharged from the hospital, and talk to them about their discharge plan, any barriers they might have, how to prevent exacerbation, diet, activity, what to do, and even help them make sure that they have their medicines, that they can make appointments. And so I would really encourage people to make sure that their healthcare provider does take a holistic approach to their whatever their diagnoses are, and not only use prescription medicine, but also use diet, exercise, the whole thing.
So, what What experience have you had with, putting chronic disease into remission, and what kinds of diseases?
So, I myself, before I had the gastric sleeve, I had diabetes, type 2 diabetes. And once you're diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, you pretty much, they say you have it until your hemoglobin A1C is around 6 for so many months without taking diabetic medicine. And so I am still on a diabetic medicine. My hemoglobin A16 is around 6. A1C, I mean, is around 6, and it's staying there. And so I just feel totally different. My blood sugar is under control. Um, by not eating processed foods and the chemicals that are in them, the food noise is so much less. Of course, I still have the food addiction, the processed food addiction and the food addiction, but the food noise is so much less now that it's not like a continuous uh, burbulation in my head that's telling me to go eat something that I don't really need. I'm not trying to eat when I'm not hungry. And I'm not going to say it doesn't come back sometimes, but we learn so many tools in the art to help us with that. And that one of the main things is to get enough sleep and drink enough water and eat clean.
Right. It's more than just food and exercise. There's so many things that we need to do
Right.
to take care of ourselves and to be in low stress and good sleep and
Hmm.
other things.
Oh, and we also find out what our triggers are. Triggers and cues. A lot of people have no idea what triggers and cues are, or that they're that important. Maybe your car is a trigger, and you need to make sure when you're in your car that there's nothing in your car that has anything to do with processed food. Maybe where you're driving in your car, that uh, one place I have to drive pretty frequently. I drive by a former fast food restaurant that was my favorite. Well, I know I'm going to drive through by that. I have tried to drive some different ways, and that works. But if I can't drive the other way because it takes longer, I get in the far lane where it's impossible for me to pull over in that restaurant, and that prevents me from doing that. So
And
I'll plan for it ahead.
a lot of people say that, we should be able to eat processed food in moderation, right? But
Hmm.
that's not what the science says, right, Susan?
Yes, science has proved that they have purposely, the processed food industry has purposely put chemicals in the food to make it as addictive as possible. They want us to crave it. And just if anybody would just think about the commercials you see on TV, it's like feed the craving. You can't eat just one. There you go. I mean, that's their business model, and I understand. Oh, I didn't mention this. Besides having a nursing license, I also have an MBA, and so I understand business models, and I understand that companies have to make money and to stay in business. But it's to me, it's a shame that this has been done as a business model to progress their business. And you'll also hear people, Melissa, you'll hear people in the processed food industry say that these chemicals need to be in the food to make them last longer. And while that may be true, there are some chemicals that you can put in food to make them last longer. That's not why they're in the food now. There's
Wow.
there's chemicals that are not addictive that don't affect your brain that can make foods last longer. And two of the foods that are addictive because they affect, or two of the additives that affect our brain that are put in foods were started years and years ago as additives to make food last longer, and that's sugar and salt. And now there's way more than what needs to be in a food. If you take a recipe for let's say you take a recipe for a food and then it says to put 2 cups of sugar in it, you could probably put a fourth cup of sugar in it and get by with it. And I don't know if it would uh, cause cravings or not, but that just goes to show you how there's like sometimes 10 times the amount of sugar or salt that needs to be in a food.
Wow, that's
And
amazing.
yeah, and I try to not even call them foods. I call them processed substances. Oh, and one of my other affirmations is I refuse to spend my hard-earned money on processed substances.
Right. It actually costs more money to eat that food than it does to
Hmm.
buy clean food. Animal
Hmm.
protein, vegetables, fruits, they are cheaper if you stop buying boxed processed foods.
Hmm. And now in society, used to there were, and there still are food deserts where there's not any clean food, but they're so few and far between now because even the quick stop stores and the fast food mini marts and things like that, they have clean food in them. They're getting more vegetables and fruit and clean meat in them and water and carbonated beverages are full of sodium.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
and a lot of people don't know that because they've never been taught. They just don't know. And they
Right.
don't know why. They don't know why when they buy that particular food and they eat it, they have go back an hour later and eat more, and it's like they forgot they even ate anything. It's because of the chemicals in the food,
100%.
how they affect the brain.
So, Susan, you are now in the ARC and you are leading a group of people to try to eliminate or not eliminate, put in remission chronic disease.
Hmm.
And so can you tell us a little bit about like what that entails and how you're leading that group?
So what that is where we meet daily for 15, 20 minutes, or we can meet 3 times a week. It just depends on what the person needs. And we meet as a group and we talk about different aspects of whatever the chronic disease is and our journey with processed food addiction and where we are and what our wins are for the week. What did we win from yesterday, and what are our intentions for tomorrow? And it's been proven that if you give an intention, if I meet with you and we both give each other intentions of what we plan to do with our food or whatever it is that we're talking about, that that helps us to follow through with it and to stick with it. And
Right.
so, what I do is, depending on what the disease is that you want to put into remission, which could be lung disease, it could be heart disease, it could be arthritis, it could be mental health issues, and I'm talking like brain fog, muscle and joint pain, um, not being able to concentrate, those kind of things that you want to put into remission. Then we make a plan of what can you
Awesome.
do. Yes, what can you
And
do?
and this is the advantage of going to a coach. I mean, versus just being in a group, like you're actually doing one-on-one coaching with people and giving them some accountability.
Right. There's like I think the most that we would have in a group would be 5 people. And so if we meet like 20 to 30 minutes 3 times a week, that would give us plenty of time to do a quick check-in where we talked about what happened yesterday, what we plan to do tomorrow. And then we have a pod where I put information about the diseases and and what you can do to put that disease into remission.
Wow, that sounds awesome, Susan. And so that's something that you're doing kind of above and beyond besides just your regular ARC hours
Yes.
that you lead.
Yes, that's considered in the ARC, that would be considered a premium chat and would be at a little extra charge.
And so how would people then reach out if they're interested in joining your group? How do they reach you, Susan?
They would reach me through the addiction reset community, and there's an email, and I did not get that right
Oh,
here.
I can put it in the show notes, Susan.
Okay. All right. So just put that in the show notes and they can reach out there to connect with us. They can join the art, and it's a very reasonable monthly fee to join the art. And you get access to I think, almost 24 hours. So I think it's more like 17 hours. But if we had more advocates and leaders to lead the hours, and it's all over the world. It's not just here in the United States, it's all over the world. And you have access to the library, you have access to the ARC TV, you have access to an advocate, you have access to Joan Ifland, the expert in food addiction, nutrition. Uh, so you have access to a lot of things for the monthly fee. And and you can ask questions, you can email, you can come to, and when I say 17 hours, that means that you call in on a Zoom call and you can check in with an advocate or with Joan or our director, Sheila. You can check in with them and maybe ask questions and get help. You can always email Joan. And you can email Joan at the same email that Melissa good grief, that Melissa's going to put in the notes. But you can email her there too and ask her questions, and she answers you.
Right. And I have other contact information that I'll put in the notes as well, because not only am I in the ARC, but I'm also doing coaching outside of the ARC. So
Mm-hmm.
I can do both.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think this is really awesome, Susan. I'm really glad that you're doing this because I think that more people just really need to know about putting chronic disease into remission. And
Right. They never told people before that you could possibly. I always tell the patients that I speak with about when we're talking about congestive heart failure. I tell them you can possibly put your heart condition in remission. You can actually most likely improve your heart function if you follow your doctor's instructions, take your medications as ordered, keep all your appointments, and change your lifestyle and your diet and exercise. And you can't tell somebody you need to eat better and just go on down the road. You have to actually tell them, avoid added salt, avoid process. I even tell people the more you avoid processed foods and eat healthy vegetables and proteins that are clean, that you prepare at home and don't eat out, the more likely you are to be able to improve your heart function. And
100%.
they've never been told that. Oh, and one other thing I do want to mention because it's smoking is one of the worst things someone can do for their heart and lungs. It is right up there with using illicit drugs like methamphetamine. It's right
Wow.
there with it. So just remember that. And if you know someone, I mean, you can't, there's ways to approach people with it, but just be aware of that when
Wow.
for yourself and for people in your family. It's right there with it. And addiction is terrible. Addiction is a terrible thing. Whether it be cigarettes, drugs, food, alcohol, whatever it is, it's a terrible thing. And it has a way of sneaking up on you. And Melissa mentioned it. Stress, uh, we were talking about sleep. You get distracted by anything in your life or something going on, it can sneak in on you.
Yeah, it does. 100%. Well, Susan, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today and your knowledge and your heart for helping others. Your work is an incredible reminder that healing is possible when we address the underlying causes of disease instead of simply managing symptoms. And if today's conversation encouraged you or taught you something new, please take a moment to like this episode, subscribe to Built Not Burnt Out, leave a review, and share it with someone that could benefit hearing Susan's message. Every like, review, and share helps us reach more people who are looking for hope, healing, and practical tools to reclaim their health. You'll find Susan's contact information and additional resources in the show notes so that you can learn more about her work and the Addiction Reset community. And if you're looking for support in creating lasting transformation in your own life, I'd love to connect with you through the Becoming Method, where we help people transform not only what they eat, but how they think, live, and become. And thank you so much for listening. And remember that lasting transformation isn't about trying harder. It's about becoming the person you were created to be. And until next time, keep building a life of strength, purpose, and freedom because you are built, not burnt out.